to Tuesday is the second business and markets day of the first full week in February. I am boosting on Mafaye. Just get a sense of where the markets finished off across Frontier Africa on Monday. Markets were largely down in the red from South Africa, where the GSE fell about 0.5% on the back of those Trump tariffs salvos being fired across some of the biggest economies in the world: China, Mexico, and Canada. Some of those is being reversed overnight and all that. Yesterday, Mexico had a discussion with President Trump. The 25% tariff was put on ice for 1 month. News also on early Tuesday was that Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada also had a discussion with President Trump. The 25% tariff and all that also been placed on ice for another 1 month as well. So negotiations going on as it were. So markets begin to pull back late Monday from Wall Street, and that's playing into the global markets early Tuesday. We'll see how the rest of Frontier Africa will react to that. Broadly speaking, we're all in the red, with the exception of Nigeria, where the stock market was in the green by 0.13% for those 5 markets we cover on a daily basis on the back of earnings that we saw from big agro-allied companies and a very big, heavy trading in 3 of the biggest Nigerian banks, UBA, FBN Holdings, the parent company of First Bank, and of course, Zenith Bank. So that's the story as far as the markets is concerned. Let's go to the East and Central Africa, grab a few headlines. Leaders from South Africa and from Southern Africa, South Africa, and the East African community are holding a summit on the crisis in Congo, with the Goma being in the eyes of the storm, with the M23 rebels. The salvos been fired between South Africa, President Andrew and President Paul Kagame over who's responsible for the latest blown up of crisis in DRC. That's the big story. Over 80 cargo trucks heading to Goma, conveying goods and other products, stopped and then stuck at the border with Uganda because of this the situation in DRC. Thousands of folks who've fled. Goma's been asked to return by M23 rebels. They're not coming out. They're not coming back, as it were. No one is sure of what will happen next. So the summit taking place on the back of the latest crisis, it will be a very good one to have all parties come to an agreement and how to deal with the rebels in the eastern part of one of the biggest landmass economy in Africa and the DRC Congo. Get economic flows and trade in the region begin to flow, including to South Africa. In the meantime, Tanzania says it attracted 5 million tourists for the full year 2024. As the earnings season began to deepen across the world for Kenya's biggest market in East Africa, East African Breweries, which is, of course, cross-listed in Tanzania and Ugandan securities exchanges, reported a profit on the upside for the first time in 3 years. Kenya Power PLC, owned majorly by the government, with the government holding a chunk of the shares, reporting a cash dividend payment for the first time in 9 years. That'll be roughly 20 billion that goes to Ruto's administration. So those are some of the earnings we're tracking, not just within East Africa, but the rest of the continent as well. So that takes us to West Africa, where Nigeria's 2.7 million barrels per day 2027 target is achievable. That's according to the CEO of Hess Energies, who spoke to Frontier Africa Report on Monday. Outside that oil story for Nigeria, OPEC also reported the outcome of the meeting of this Joint Ministerial Monitoring Committee, GMMC, yesterday, saying all the parameters agreed upon at the last meeting in December last year remain on hold. Nothing's changed, with the exception that the Secretariat in Vienna has decided to kick out Rystad Energy and the Energy Information Agency, the EIA, as part of the research information support, and onboarded a few others. That's already in the news since yesterday. Nigeria's Debt Management Office has opened the February subscription for the country's savings bond for this month. In the meantime, the shares of bellwether agro-allied companies Presco, as well as Okumu Oil PLC, rallied strongly yesterday on the Nigerian exchange on the back of their very big earnings that were reported for full year 2024. We expect a whole lot more earnings for full year and fourth quarter of last year coming through from Nigeria. Ghana consumer inflation came in surprisingly slower at 23.5% a year on year for the month of January. How the Bank of Ghana will react at its next monetary policy meeting, we'll wait to see. The EFDB is proposing an African unit of accounts. I'm sure you must have grabbed that already. The whole idea is to ensure that we have something very close to what the IMF has in terms of units of account in which members can back this up by critical minerals, cobalt, lithium, and a whole lot of others that Africa has. It's a proposal that sounds really good as Akinwumi Adesina begins to count down the final months of his 10-year presidency at the EFDB group. In Guinea, the Simandou iron ore project, that multi-billion-dollar project, is getting $6 billion investment from Baowu Steel company from China. That's good news. That project that crosses through Guinea into neighboring countries is worth about 20 to 22 billion US dollars. I'm taking that to Southern Africa to grab some headlines for you. President Trump hit South Africa, says he's cutting off funding for South Africa over allegations that South Africa has signed a new law that operates land from people. President Ramaphosa reported in a very diplomatic way on Twitter, on X as it were, about 6 or 7 paragraphs yesterday, stating that South Africa does not do that. Majority of the lands in South Africa are owned by whites and others. And so that has been refuted. President Ramaphosa wants a discussion with the White House to fully understand land matters in South Africa. That's in the news. In the meantime, South Africa factory data showing there's a bit of a dim of hope on manufacturing productivity because of the trade disruptions from Mozambique next door, because of the outcome of the disputed presidential election just towards the end of last year. In Botswana, the authorities and De Beers says they're finalizing talks on the diamond deal. The new president in Botswana wants a bigger share of the diamonds that's being extracted from the country from De Beers and others. They want a bigger chunk of the cake. Vodacom earnings in South Africa, that earnings came on big on the upside. 6% was the upside for the shares of Vodacom yesterday on GSE because Vodacom reported strong earnings from Nigeria, from Africa and United Kingdom on the books. The revenue was about 1.6% to the upside from that big telco giant. Nampak in Zimbabwe says she's still in talks to sell about 51.5% of the equity to Nampak of South Africa. It's been months and months in that discussion. There's no end yet. Nampak issued a market statement yesterday and says those conversations are still ongoing. Let's finish off in North Africa. And again, you've got Morocco's unemployment rising to 13.3% for full year. That's the backward-looking data. That will have implications for interest rate decision by the Bank Al-Maghrib when it meets next time. Egypt and Somali's ministers says they're meeting, they're exploring opportunities for partnership in agriculture. Somali sorely needs it, as well as Egypt. And Meta AI says it's officially launched in the MENA region. That's the Middle East, Northern Africa. And finally, ministers from Egypt and Ukraine are discussing food security cooperation. Ukraine is one of the world's leading exporter of wheat and a few other products, agro-products, and Egypt sorely need those products. This cooperation, we'll see how that paces out. And those are your headlines as we get into today's trading day, Tuesday, the second day of the week. We hope you have a very profitable day. I am Boston Omofaye, and do have a good day. This is your Frontier Opening Bell.